Welcome to Flunking The Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this week's episode of Flunking The Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
Alright, Kim, so we are going to get into our discussion of Lie to Me, which was written and directed by Joss Whedon himself. And the blurb is, Buffy is lured into a trap by a group of vampire wannabes who hope Spike will turn them into vampires in exchange for giving him the Slayer. So here's my thing. I don't know why this is the blurb that I'm gonna, discuss at length. But the blurbs on these DVDs are so inconsistent because sometimes they're super spoiler filled, and then this one actually feels like more of a proper teaser that doesn't really explain the heart of the episode. It's kind of
what all's going to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of the gimmick of the episode, but it isn't the main, spoiled plot point that we sometimes get in these blurbs. I like this version better than what we normally get, where it's just hey, did you know Angel was a vampire?
Yeah.
Turns out that's going to be revealed halfway through this episode.
No. Well, so when I rewatched the episode, I very much enjoyed it, but I was remembering what you said last time about what a pivotal, important episode you think this is. Mm-hmm. And I still didn't see it.
All right.
And I really thought about doing a Google search for Lie to Me and about why it was so important in the Buffyverse. But I didn't, because I thought that might be cheating. So, I can kind of see it's a growing up moment for her, and I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say about this episode.
And the truth is, this is more about the philosophy and the mission statement and the growth for both Buffy and, in a way, Angel. There's a lot of growth for Angel in this episode. A lot of people kind of talk about Amends and how Amends is basically Angel episode 0, but this also really feeds into a lot of stuff for Angel's character going into the future that I didn't really notice previously, but on this watch through, I was just yeah, there's a lot of good Angel stuff in this episode, but this is absolutely one of my favorite episodes. This is easily top 20 for me, and I think it's super important for the theme of the show. It's not necessarily, there are a couple of events that happen in it, it's the first episode where Buffy tells Angel that she loves him, so there's some important moments, but the real important thing to me is the theme of the entire series, the mission statement of the entire series kind of really comes back to this episode and really does a lot of interesting thing to set up kind of how viewers can watch the show if they're inclined to watch the show that way. You kind of have to have, I don't know, a love for theme and a love for kind of digging deeper into the narrative to see some of the stuff that's real pivotal in this episode. But the ideas that it has about existentialism and choices and growing up are all really key to Buffy as a whole, and this episode does a lot to kind of build that foundation for the rest of the series. But I'll have a lot to say about this episode as I get into the breakdown.
Okay.
A lot.
Well, are we ready to get into it?
I'm ready.
Okay, sounds good.
Start us off, Kim.
Okay, here we go. So it starts in a playground at night. There's a creepy merry-go-round spinning by itself. Mm-hmm. And then we see a little boy. The script says he's 8 years old, kind of sitting by himself. And he says he's kind of talking to himself, says he's waiting for his mom and she's always late. And then behind him we see Drusilla, who is very creepy in this scene.
Everything about this scene is just creepy and terrifying and unsettling in all of the best ways. This, again, displays just how brilliant Juliet Landau is. And what I particularly
she's
noticed,
wonderful. She's wonderful.
What I particularly noticed, because I have been watching for this since I noticed the idea of her cutting Spike's cheek in school hard with her fingernails, this scene fixates on her fingernails a lot. Like, as she's running her hand along the playground equipment, there's a lot of close-ups of her hands and her nails. So, apparently there was a whole lot of foreshadowing to her just, murdering people with her fingernails that I did not catch.
Yeah. Drusilla talks to him and asks him, are you lost? And should I walk you home? And he says, yeah, no. And he starts to get a little creeped out at this point. And she starts singing a song that her mom used to sing her to sleep. Mm-hmm. And then has the creepiest, scariest line.
She had the sweetest voice. What will your mummy sing when they find your body?
Oh.
And I'm like, ah!
I wrote a note after that line that I was like, this kid is a badass, because he's holding his own.
I would have taken off running. And then she's kind of about to kill him, and Angel shows up and is very menacing, tells the kid to run home now. And because Sunnydale, that doesn't seem safe. But then again, his mom left him in a playground at night, so,
I was just like, Angel, you just sent that boy off to go die to some other vampire, but okay.
Exactly, right? You just gave him to another vampire. So Drusilla and Angel have a talk, and we realize they have a past. Mm-hmm. While they're talking, we see Angel patrolling on top of a roof, and she sees them and kind of gets the wrong idea, which in the script book, it says that Drusilla is aware that Buffy is there and looks at her, and then purposely makes it look like her and Angel are kissing. Now, in the show, she makes it look like her and Angel are kissing, but, you can't tell she did it on purpose or that she knew she was being watched by Buffy or anything. But in the script book, she does it on purpose, and she's supposed to have looked at Buffy a couple of times. Knowing she was there, but I guess they took that part out.
Yeah, I've never even really read it. I see that they're, physically close from the angle that Buffy's seen from, but I've never even really read it like it's supposed to be a fake-out kiss. It's just supposed to be an intimate moment. And
I probably would have never read it that way if I had not read the script, but once I read that it's supposed to be that way, I saw it when she did it.
Mm-hmm. I can envision the scene and
you
see
can't
that.
really see it.
Yeah. There's already, a lot that I want to talk about in this scene.
Okay.
The big thing is Drew basically spells out that she knows something's going to happen with Angel. Again, her visions are not necessarily the most clear, but she drops a lot of hints, like something bad's going to happen between Angel and Buffy, and she's excited about it. And so that gives a lot of hints about this idea of Drew knows, just like she knows when he later does lose his soul, and kind of has that episode in conjunction with him losing his soul where she collapses. She can see to the future enough to know that Angel's going to change again, and she's excited. She's talking about it being the beginning and all of this stuff, which is just really, really cool to have Drew have basically an awareness of what's to come, but maybe not every last detail or exactly when it's going to happen, or just can't communicate enough to where other people know that she knows.
That's what I'm saying. I think it would be cooler, her having that awareness, if she was capable of verbalizing anything that she knew in a rational way. Mm-hmm. But she can't, so it's always like a riddle or something.
Yeah.
For everyone around her.
Yeah. But it makes it so much fun on rewatches where you get to say, oh, that's what Drew was talking about.
Yeah.
But then she also talks about that Angel's heart stinks of Buffy, which is nice because it's a very nice echo to the quote that we get much later in the series in the flashback in Full for Love, where she tells Spike that he's all covered in her, again referring to Buffy. So it's like she can smell Buffy on these two men in her life, and it's just an interesting parallel between those two. And so that's my notes for just the cold opening before the credits, before anything. That's what I got so far.
Okay. Well, and then we have the theme song, and then we go into Sunnydale High School, and they're walking through the hallway, and it's Giles and Jenny, and we have Jenny back.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed something about Jenny in this episode.
Yeah, I did. I knew you would notice something about Jenny in this episode.
I think that at this point, they had Jenny's later plot line already planned.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time that Jenny has a scene where that's already been planned. If it's not, it's the first time it's noticeable.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching Jenny closely.
Yeah.
To try to see.
I haven't even been watching Jenny that closely, and I noticed it in this episode. I was just like, oh, Kim's going to talk about that.
Yeah. It's not happening yet, but.
Yes.
Giles is talking to Jenny, and they're talking about going on a date, and Jenny has planned the date, and it's a secret.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's pretty funny. And then Buffy walks up, and Giles starts talking about her hunt last night, and she's just kind of very vague answers, and yeah, not really much is going on. And then Giles does something that is completely out of character for like the last episodes, and he tells her, "Why don't you take the night off?" And she's like, "Oh, okay." And there's a whole paragraph here that is cut out where Giles talks about, yeah, I realize like a young person can't spend all their time fighting evil. No slaying for you this evening. You can go do whatever you want and stuff like that. And I'm like, look, Giles, where'd you come from? Like, they cut it all out, but he talks about her having free time to herself a lot.
So here's my thing that makes that not seem as out of character is the fact that we just got the episode that kind of reveals his past, and it's perhaps his like kind of reflecting on his rebellious stages. Mm-hmm. Maybe makes him think maybe I shouldn't be so hard on Buffy so that she can have some freedom and not act out the way that I act out, or just kind of remembering what caused him to act out. Mm-hmm. And kind of reflecting on that. Yeah. And
I see that completely. Yes, very much so. But most of the episodes by now, he has been very gung-ho. You're on your own. You have to do this. You have to train. You can't take a night off.
Yeah.
And then in this episode, he's like, oh no, go have some fun, yeah. And then there's another conversation, little exchange between Buffy and Giles that was cut out. That's pretty funny. Buffy says, do they know about fun in England? And Giles replies, yes, but it's considered in very poor taste to have it.
I've seen that quote before, and it is one that I am sad that is cut.
Yeah, it was cut. So, and then the next scene is everyone in class, a history class, and Willow and Buffy throughout this are sending notes back and forth, talking about Drusilla and who she is and what she looked like and stuff. While Cordelia is going on a rant about how unfair Marie Antoinette was treated.
This is our one and only Cordelia scene in this episode, but it's just lovely.
She was very much pro Marie Antoinette and said she was going to let them have cake. And then the teacher says, well, that's one way to look at it. And like, I do not know why teachers are always doing this with Cordelia. She has these insane ideas.
This one
that are
really,
just crazy.
though.
And the teachers are always like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
Instead of telling her, no, that's crazy. You know?
I have a feeling at this point.
Time it's happened.
I have a feeling at this point that these teachers have had enough arguments with Cordelia that they're just like, yes, Cordelia. All right. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
They've learned.
And I'm going to go ahead and warn you, that is the only scene with Cordelia in the show. There are 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly. At least 3. There might be 4. Fairly big scenes with Cordelia in the script book.
They cut out 3 or 4 Cordelia scenes? Okay, worst episode ever. I renounce everything I've said about this episode.
3 or 4. And they are mostly all, about her trying to get with Ford.
Because she needed another boyfriend. She hasn't had enough of those.
Yep. So I'm going to, when we get to them, I'm going to read them out to us. But yeah, they cut out a lot of Cordelia in this episode.
Oh my goodness.
Like actual scenes and conversations. And it's weird. Okay. And then Buffy and Willow are talking in the hallway. And Xander walks up and Willow tells Xander about Angel with a girl. They start talking about going to the Bronze that night. Xander starts talking about how to cheer her up. And we hear a voice say Oreos and apple juice. There's a whole lot. And Buffy turns around and gets all excited and hugs somebody. And it's a long lost friend. And his name is Ford. Mm-hmm. And apparently he was a really good friend of hers in Los Angeles and has transferred here. And they start talking about hanging out. And they make plans to get together at the Bronx that night. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's anything terribly important in this scene to discuss. Except Willow.
I'll interject.
Okay,
this
go ahead.
Introduces the fact that he was Buffy's 5th grade crush. Which is going to be important to some talking points that I have later. It also says that while she moped over him, she was listening to Divinal's I Touch Myself, which is also going to make it on the playlist. Because of course it is.
I was fixing to talk about how at the end of this conversation, Willow has a light bulb moment and she realizes that that's what that song is about.
And you just do like the moment of contemplation right before she says, oh, that's what that song is about. It's just beautiful.
Okay, so I'm gonna just say I grew up in a very sheltered, protective family, and I was a freshman in college, maybe sophomore in college, when I was watching through all these. I realized what that song was about when I watched the scene. Oh. So I have lots of sympathy for Willow right here because this literally happened to me. This scene is how I realized what that song was about.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I was like, So anyway, I'm going to point that out. Promise it's true.
So from there we cut to the Bronze and we have another song, which is Lois on the Brink by Willoughby, while Xander, Willow, and Ford are playing a game of pool, and Buffy comes in and is revealed that he's been giving Willow and Xander all kinds of secrets about Buffy's past.
Throughout these next scenes, while they're here at the Bronze, Xander, his comments, just every time he says anything, crack me up.
Oh, yeah. Because
he makes so many hints about Buffy and Angel and who they really are and stuff. And it's just like, geez, Xander.
Yeah.
Can you not keep a secret?
It's so, this is one of my,
I love it.
Favorite uses of Xander is to just have him be there for, that dry wit in the background, those bits of levity. And he does, he interacts with a lot of people in this episode, and it's real. I love the Xander, Angel, and Willow stuff later on in the episode. It's all really good. But yeah, this scene, there's just several times where he just steals the scene, and it is
with just a couple of words.
Oh yeah, and
you're not wrong.
It's so clever, and it's such a great use of Xander. And I'm also going to comment, every now and again I do this, but I'm also going to comment on Willow's shirt. But she is wearing the creepiest shirt.
Yeah, what is that shirt?
It looks like it's a bunch of geisha heads. Different colored geisha heads arranged in a pattern on a shirt. I'm not entirely sure what it's supposed to be. But, if you just look at it at a distance, it just looks like a stripy kind of pattern shirt. But the more I looked at it, the more I was like, no, those are faces.
Yeah, it's a really weird shirt. I noticed it. Buffy goes to get a drink, or she comes in and she sees everybody and says hi. And like you said, finds out Ford is telling secrets about her. And then she goes to get a drink and she runs into Angel, who she kind of just is a little passive aggressive with.
A little.
Yeah. And ask him what he did last night, and he says nothing. And she's like, huh. And then so she just walks away and goes back to Ford and Xander and Willow. And Angel follows her and gets introduced. And then Buffy looks at Ford and says, hey, it's crowded in here. Do you want to take a walk? And just leaves with Ford, which at that point I have in my notes, way to be mature, Buffy. Because it seems very, just talk to him.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, an important moment for me that I'll talk about later in the episode.
One?
This moment here where she kind of like wants to avoid Angel and go off with Ford. So, yeah, specifically about the maturity aspect to it. We'll talk about it a little bit later in the episode. And then Willow has this lovely little cute, like, inviting Angel to play pool with them, and then he disappears. And then the lovely
and Willow
line.
makes a very funny comment.
See, you made him do that thing where he's gone.
Okay, so then Buffy and Ford are walking and talking, and Buffy hears noises, so she tells Ford to go get her purse. She left it in the bronze, and then goes to fight a vampire. And Ford doesn't go. He turns around and follows Buffy, and it looks very natural. Like, it looks like he's just like, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't leave her alone with those noises. Let me go make sure she's okay. And he goes back and watches her dust a vampire. And she tries to make up a story about cats.
Very convincing story.
Yes, and he has the best line. Oh, I thought you were just slaying a vampire. And they talk about how he knows. Which we never find out how he actually knows. It just says that he found out in her old school when stuff happened.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't get to find the moment. Hear about the moment.
It's one of my biggest gripes, not only that we don't really know how he found out and how he knows so much about it, but also that nobody really seems to question the fact that he knows, which I think at the very least Giles, like, just kind of later on, just like, oh, okay, he just knows. Okay, cool, whatever. Is a little weird.
And he knows a lot of stuff he shouldn't know.
Like, a lot of information.
Later, he knows Spike. You're Spike,
he knows
right?
Who
William
Spike
the Bloody?
Is. He knows
and,
who
like,
Spike
says William the Bloody. And it took Giles, the Watcher, like, hours, possibly even days, I don't remember, to find out who Spike was. But this guy knows? Like, what research engine is he using? So then we have Buffy and Willow at night in their rooms talking on the phone with each other and discussing how he knew. And Buffy's like, yeah, I'm glad I can be myself with him. And then we see Ford, and he walks into like a deserted factory. And inside, they call it, in the script book, they call it the Sunset Club a bunch. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go with the Sunset Club. I don't think that's ever mentioned in the show.
I think Willow mentions it
does she?
In her research synopsis to Angel later on, where she's just like, this is the address, it's called the Sunset Club, and that's the only drop that you get. But it is the Sunset Club in my notes, so I will follow along, no problem.
Okay. And he goes in, and it is very much the cliche vampire club, people dressed in what you would assume vampires would wear, like some are straight out of movies, some are straight out of like cheesy books. Like, it is people who very much like vampires.
Yes. And it will also be responsible for adding some music to the playlist that is very different tonally than what we've gotten so far, because it's very like angsty in that same vibe. But during this section, Neverland by the Sisters of Mercy plays. It is a 12-minute song.
Ooh, wow. That is a very long song.
It's definitely one of those you're supposed to like turn on and just like zone out to.
Yeah, that is a very long song. Ford he comes in and he's talking to someone named Diego. And Diego very much wants to know everything and is grilling Ford for a lot of information. And you could tell Ford really does not want to give it. And also that Diego's name is actually Marvin. Which I kind of like.
Yeah. Marvin the vampire. I think it could work.
I think it would work. And then a girl, Chanterelle, comes up. And they start talking about being true believers and becoming blessed. Mm-hmm. And then Ford gets really weird and starts speaking along to a vampire movie that is a really old vampire movie that's playing on a giant screen.
Yeah, it's actually specifically, it's the 1973 version of Dracula.
And see, when I was watching this, I was like, I wonder what movie that is. No, Megan will tell me. Megan will tell me when we do the podcast. I knew you would know.
I like research, okay?
No, it's fine. I just knew you would know. That's why I'm like, I'm not going to bother to look it up. Megan will tell me.
So Chanterelle is one of my absolute favorite, like, background characters. She's played by Julia Lee, and she returns as multiple different aliases over the course of the series. And
but she's always the same person.
Story arc is just fantastic. Yeah, and it's designed to be the same person. You know, it's not just like an actor playing different characters. It's like, and it's fabulous. It's one of my favorite things, and like lasts through the entire Buffyverse, because she is in the very last episode of Angel. So it's always fun to like see this very first, you know, just happenstance. They hired this girl and they kept bringing her back in these different roles as she's kind of grown up and matured in the background. You just get to check in with her at different stages of her life and see how much she's matured and how much she's changed. And it's one of my absolute like favorite character arcs that you just don't really even see other than like checking in here and there.
Yeah, and it's a very realistic growth, I think.
And you also get the hint here because Ford is taking medicine and clearly like in some pain. So this is the first little drop of that. But none of that matters, because now we're in Willow's room and Angel's about to knock on the window.
Yes. And it is adorable. It is the most adorable thing ever.
Yeah, my notes literally just say, I love these two. I really, like, I want more Angel and Willow scenes. I want that.
Yeah,
so
together.
much.
It's just the best. There's so many lines in here that are just amazing. We can't possibly do them all. But Angel basically knocks on her door and needs her help to track somebody down, and it's Ford. And Willow's like, yeah, no. And they talk about how he's jealous, and then they discover that Ford is not registered at the school at all. Angel talks a little bit about how much Buffy has changed him from the person he used to be. And then Willow's mom calls out wanting to know if she's still up. And she kicks Angel out and says, come by, tomorrow night and I'll tell you what I find out.
And he asks
but there are just so many adorable lines in here. I can't decide which ones I should share.
If this is a bad time,
No, I'm not supposed to have boys in my room.
I promise to behave myself.
Okay, good.
I guess I need help.
Help? You mean like on homework? No, 'cause you're old and you already know stuff.
I want you to track someone down on the net.
Oh, great. I'm so the net girl.
I just want to find everything I can. Records, affiliates. I'm not even sure what I'm looking for yet.
Great. What's the name?
Billy Fordham.
Angel, if I say something you really don't want to hear, do you promise not to bite me?
But as Angel's leaving and asks Willow to not tell Buffy, and her panic is just so apparent so fast. She's just like, you want me to lie? But it's Buffy.
Yeah, and she admits that she is not a good liar.
Yeah, well, and you saw how she reacted when Buffy lied to Giles. Like, lying is really bad in Willow's book. It is terrible. But yeah, absolutely one of the best just joys to behold is this scene between Angel and Willow.
Now we have two scenes that are cut out. The first one is Buffy and Ford sitting in the hangout area at the school and talking about the prom at her old school and watching it go up in flames and being a hit and stuff. And Buffy says it was the worst night of my life. And Ford says you saved a lot of people. They never actually say how he knew, but obviously he was there.
Yeah. And
Ford makes a comment that's, 1 minute you're a kid living your safe kid world, and then the truth hits you in the face. And it's kind of a foreshadowing a little bit.
Yep.
But that whole scene's cut out. And then they get up and start walking inside, and Cordelia comes up to them. She says, Buffy, you haven't introduced me to your new friend. And Buffy says, yeah, isn't that weird? And Ford says, who's that? And Buffy says, oh, just someone I like to ignore. So that's the first one with Cordelia. There's more later.
Okay.
That's just kind of a little one. She comes up, she's flirting with Ford, wanting to be introduced to him. The others have more detail. I know you're looking forward to hearing them.
So from there, it's Buffy and Ford coming up to Willow, and Willow is just so very bad at lying.
Yes.
But there's just the amazing, cute exchange between them. And then Giles comes in and is not really better at lying.
Because she might suddenly need study help.
That's spontaneous study help that you've got to interrupt your school librarian on his date for.
Of course. And he's going out on his date with Jenny, where he still doesn't know where he's going. Mm-hmm. And Buffy's like, "Oh, it's okay, Ford knows." And Giles pulls her aside to make sure she is not giving away her secret identity to impress boys. Which, kind of a good idea, but... She explains that she didn't tell him, he knew. And, yeah.
Yeah, he just accepts it. He's like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And then just goes about his
Not really. But, yeah. This next scene, we have Buffy and Ford walking outside at night around the school. And Buffy says, "And on your right, it's our beautiful campus. You've now seen everything in Sunnydale." So I guess they walked around the town. And I'm like, well, I don't know, because we already know that in this town there is a museum big enough to get touring mummies, a college, other clubs, because Oz said he was playing at another club that one night, a military base, a mall, at least 2 other high schools, and a zoo. And possibly other things. So I don't really see how you can walk around a whole town that has all that stuff. Because doesn't it also have 14 graveyards?
So I think in addition to the amnesia thing that Sunnydale has going for it, it also has similar to how Dracula's castle kind of just poofed into existence. All of those other things just poof into and then out of existence, depending on what the Hellmouth wants as its big bad for that week.
Like the zoo? Okay.
Yeah. The Hellmouth's just I kind of want to do hyenas. I'm going to create a zoo. All right, I'm done with hyenas. Zoo's gone.
Possibly. Because this town, Sunnydale has a lot of stuff for a town that's supposed to be so tiny.
The Hellmouth works in mysterious ways.
And this is not a town. I grew up in a town with a population of 400 people. We had 1 4-way stop. So to me, Sunnydale is gigantic. Okay, and then they see 2 vampires running across the campus. And Ford pulls out his own stake. Buffy fights one and stakes him. And meanwhile, Ford holds one of them to the ground and tells her he wants information and he'll let her live. And when Buffy comes back, she's gone and Ford says he killed her. And then we cut to Willow, Angel, and Xander, and they're headed for the Vampire Sunset Club.
So, yeah. Angel here has this moment where he's just talking about kind of what's been found so far, and the fact that there's no records is incriminating enough. And I just wrote, "Detective Angel!" !
Yeah. Although, I mean, it's incriminating that he is not registered at the school, because, he lied about that. But, I mean, most high school students don't really have a whole paper trail to their life yet. I'm just saying. It's not like they have credit or job experience, or, there's not a whole lot they've...
Yeah. Well, you never know. You never know how deep Willow goes, too, because I'm sure she searched stuff on his parents. And it could be that his parents never even moved to Sunnydale, that he just ran off on his own. That's kind of always what I suspected. Although he is buried in Sunnydale, so I guess maybe it would make sense that his parents live in Sunnydale. I don't know. Don't think about that too hard. They did move,
but he decided not to go to school there because, he's dying.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
his parents know.
School.
Yeah, one would assume his parents know, so they wouldn't be like, "No, you have to go to school."
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, if it was me or one of my kids, I'd just be like, "Okay, well, we'll just register you for homeschool and you can live your life." What's left? I would think. I wouldn't make them go to school.
Yeah. Ford does definitely fit the pattern of absentee parents, though.
Yeah, true. Well, that's everybody in the show. So they go into the club and they get in by claiming they're friends of Ford. There's a very cute convo between Willow and Xander about sore thumbs. And then they realize that the theme of this club is yay vampires. And they have a conversation with Chanterelle, who tells them, don't be ashamed. It's cool that you're open to the vampires, and talks about how they're the lonely ones and they don't want to actually hurt anybody, and a bunch of stuff not true. Angel comes back and tells her she's a fool. At which point she's very diplomatic with him. Mm-hmm. Angel says he knows what the club is. They're vampire worshippers. Starts talking about how they don't know anything about vampires, what they are, how they live, how they dress. And at that moment, one of the people there at the club walks by and like pushes through them and is dressed exactly like Angel. Mm-hmm. And I love it so much.
It is absolutely one of the most delightful things. That moment of realization and then that quick recovery that David Boreanaz plays, and that scene it gets me every time. Like, I always know it's coming, yet I always still react to it because it's so well played.
And they realize something's up with Ford, that the good friend of the Slayer's in a vampire club. Then we cut to the library where Giles and Jenny are there with Buffy. It is shared that Jenny's surprise date was monster trucks. And it's so funny that Jenny thought it would be a change, and Giles was like, it was.
Mm-hmm. In my bit of reading for this, I think it was in Why Buffy Matters by Rhonda Wilcox, but she talked a little bit about the two quote-unquote dates that are made in this episode, and it's the one where Jenny has a surprise date for Giles, which is monster trucks, which is definitely not what he would enjoy doing. And then Ford's later on surprise date for Buffy is a trap to basically turn her over to Spike so he can become a vampire. And it's interesting to see those parallels in this episode, but also to compare it to the idea that there is an episode later in this season called Surprise. And it's just like surprise is used several times in this episode, and this episode is so directly tied to the episode Surprise that I have to believe that that's somewhat intentional on Joss Whedon's part, because that seems like something he would do.
Then they start talking about the vampires that were on campus and why they were there, and Buffy tells them that Ford bagged a vampire his first time out, but that she sent him home to stay safe. Buffy sees a picture in the research materials on the table, and it's of Drusilla. And Giles says, she's called Drusilla. She's a paramour of Spike's. Then he says that she was killed by an angry mob in Prague, and Buffy's like, no, she's alive. Mm-hmm. And says that he saw her with Angel. And Jenny says, isn't he supposed to be a good guy?
Yep.
And it cuts to her face, and she looks pretty serious about it. And it's the first time I really think that the plot has been laid out.
Yeah.
For her.
I read that the exact same way.
Yeah. And Jenny says that I think maybe we need to read up on this nice lady. And he goes to get another book to look her up, and the vampire that Ford threatened knocks him over and runs out of the back of the library. I love this because Giles is so offended. A book! It took one of my books! I love it. He's so upset that it took one of his books.
I mean, at that point, why don't you just go ahead and kill him? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then Buffy is like, that's the vampire Ford said he killed. And they realize he lied. Mm-hmm. And so now everyone's lying to Buffy.
So then we cut to the factory, and Drusilla is there talking to a dead bird, as you do.
Well, of course.
And Spike enters to ask her if she went on a hunt and if she happened to talk to Angel. He just gets angrier and angrier until he finally snaps and explains that the bird's dead in a very rude way. And Drew just kind of whimpers a little bit, and he like immediately regrets. And it's just, it shows just how much history all of these characters have in such a brilliant way. Because there's so much about them that we don't know yet. Like at this point in the episode, we don't even know that Angel sired Drusilla. We learn that a little bit later in the same episode. But like the amount of history that these three have, and especially what you learn about Spike's particular issues with Angel and Drew much, much later in the Buffyverse, you could see why he's just so not cool with this moment at all, where he learns that Drusilla met up with Angel in the middle of the night.
Behind his back.
That is like his worst nightmare. But yeah, I love everything about all of that. And then eventually Ford comes in, and this is the moment where he reveals that he knows who Spike is, and Spike replies with the amazing line,
"Yeah, I know who I am too, so what?"
Yeah, I love it.
It's just the best response. Oh, it's so good. But this is also when we get this kind of narrative through line of Ford being like a big fanboy almost. Because he's kind of, when he's with the other vampire wannabes, he's kind of shown more as the level-headed one. But like there's this moment, and then there's a couple more moments towards the end when he's actually got Buffy trapped, that you can just see that he's like just as obsessive as they are. It's not just an escape from his fate due to his illness, but also because he's really enthusiastic about the idea of becoming a vampire, because he lays out this whole scene the way he wants it to, and even like makes Spike play along at a certain point, much to his chagrin. It's a really interesting concept. Ford's surprisingly layered for a one-off character on just how messed up he is, and how his perception of the world is really, really clouded in multiple ways. But this whole exchange, meanwhile, Spike gets the book that the vampire stole from Giles, and makes comment that it'll be very useful, and we'll get to that later in this season. But it, again, ties to... This episode's just so interconnected to, like, everything in this season, and it's great.
And it's kind of... where you don't really see. Like, kind of, it's just kind of like an afterthought.
Yeah.
You have to be paying attention to get it. Yeah.
It's one of those things that seems like it's a mistake in the moment, or you just flat out forget about it and don't even remember that it was in this episode, that this is when they steal the book, and this is when Spike starts to kind of work on that final plan to get Drew back to full health. But it's just kind of interwoven into this episode in such a casual manner that you're right, you kind of don't even really, notice it. And yeah, during this whole exchange, where Spike's really just ready to kill Ford, because why wouldn't you? Drew again shows her clairvoyance, and it's just like, nope, you're not killing this boy. He's got something to say that you're going to be interested in, basically. And she just communicates through like head shakes, and like just everything about it is great. But when he finally reveals that he is there to offer up the Slayer, and Spike grins, then you know for sure Ford is the villain in this piece, or at least wants to be,
planning to be the villain. And this is the point we kind of realize that there's not really a plan for everyone else.
Yeah. Like, all of those times, Diego's just like, I want in on the plan, I want to know what's going on, and Ford's like, I got this, trust me. This is huge in that thematic idea of trust that's played in this episode as well.
Well, yeah, because he tells Spike, I want to be a vampire, but he doesn't say anything about everybody else becoming vampires. He is planning to offer them up.
Yep. So then we go to Buffy's kitchen, and Angel asks to come in. And there's this little, kind of, again, a little bit of a passive-aggressive moment where she's just like, you can just come in, and he's just like, I was just being polite. But it also works, again, to foreshadow the fact that that's in place, to, like, remind people that he can always just come in now. And now he's got invites to not only the Summers household, but to Willow's household as of this episode. So that's going to come up later on. But then he asks to talk about Ford, and explains that Willow and Xander kind of helped him do some research, and Buffy is very, very upset, and eventually just calls him out on it and asks who Drusilla is.
And he tells her. And it's bad.
Yeah. There's so much to unpack in this scene. I don't even know where to start. Yeah. It works so well thematically for the episode on the idea of lies, and kind of lies versus the innocence of youth and adolescence, and the maturing that comes with knowing the truth. And Buffy's talking about how she can take the truth And Angel replies with, "Do you love me?" To which Buffy's first like, "What?" And he kind of, prompts her more. And then she finally says, and this is absolutely one of my favorite quotes when it comes to the Buffy-Angel relationship, which is, "I love you. I don't know if I trust you."
And it can gotta go for both of them.
Yeah. It's such an important quote in shaping this relationship. Because
100%.
Not only because of the fallout later in this, but also because you can't look at any of Buffy's relationships later in the series without comparing them to her relationship with Angel. But especially at the end of season 6, she has a very similar conversation with Spike where she says, "I could never trust you enough to love you." So that shows a huge growth after the Angel relationship and everything she learned. Because here, it's a very naive love, right? Like, I don't know if I can trust you, but I'm going to love you anyway. Whereas it's very different than the way she behaves in season 6, where she spells it right out. It's just like, love can't exist without trust. And that shows a huge amount of growth. And that's, the relationship between Buffy and Angel is very much a relationship about maturity and like growing up in a relationship and handling future relationships differently than she handled her relationship with Angel. And you can see that with Riley, you can see that with Spike, that had she not had that relationship with Angel, her relationships with the other two would have been very, very different. Buffy is very shaped by this relationship with Angel and what happens to her, like the heartache that she goes through. And this line here is just, it's such an important line to show her growth after this relationship and how she perceives love and how she relates to love, and this idea of first love versus more of an adult love or a mature love, because this is very much shown as Buffy's first love, and she's not worried about trust. She's not worried about, how safe of a relationship is. She just knows that she loves Angel, and that's the way she frames it in her mind, is that I love you, I'm not sure I trust you. But later she perceives that you can't have one without the other.
And after that part of the conversation, he tells her about Drusilla and how he basically tortured Drusilla into insanity and then turned her into a vampire.
I did a lot of unconscionable things when I became a vampire. Drusilla was the worst. She was an obsession of mine. She was pure, sweet, and chaste.
And you made her a vampire.
First I made her insane. Killed everybody she loved. Visited every mental torture on her I could devise. She eventually fled to a convent. And on the day she took her holy orders, I turned her into a demon.
She says, well, I asked for the truth, and then he just bluntly forged part of some society that reveres vampires.
Yep.
Don't trust him. And then that ends.
Harsh stuff. He goes into quite a bit of detail about Drew. He doesn't really hold back.
No, he tells her.
There's a moment at the beginning of this episode that I didn't mention in that Drusilla-Angel exchange where she says, are you going to hurt me? And he, looks down, so upset with himself for what he's done to her. And having this scene in context and kind of just knowing that history and watching that reaction, it's really well played. The Drew stuff is hard, and we've talked about it before. The Drew stuff is really hard. I love Drusilla. I love that performance, but it's one of those that if you think about it too much, it's just going to make you want to curl up in a corner and cry.
Pretty much,
it is
yeah.
Super, super tragic.
But man, she plays it well.
Yeah. This moment of trying to figure out who to trust and who to align yourself with and who to love, and to be in love with somebody who has this in his past, who has this as a memory that he remembers doing this. You can make arguments that it wasn't really him. There's a whole line of how much the soul removes them from their previous transgressions that we're going to get into a lot, I imagine, in season 3 and beyond, once we get through the run of Angel Without a Soul at the end of this season. Just knowing that Angel remembers doing this and blames himself for it because of that memory, and really Angel takes responsibility for the things he does as Angelus and wants other people to do so as well, I think, because he does feel that. And yeah, it's just it makes Angel super complicated, it makes Drew super complicated, it makes the relationship between Buffy and Angel super complicated. There's a lot in this little scene that's like a minute long that really just gut punches you. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of my absolute favorite scenes for developing Buffy and Angel's relationship, and just how hard of a relationship it is to make work.
Well, in the next scene, we have Buffy during the day walking across campus at school, and you can tell she's very, very lost in her thoughts and trying to figure things out. And Ford runs up to her, Buffy, and start a conversation, and he mentions, I'd like to go out with you again tonight. I have a surprise. Can you meet me? And he actually, in the script book, it says that he wants to meet her at a burger joint that's been condemned. But in the show, it's just like, can you meet me here, isn't it? Well, that's what it says. Or that's what it says. And she agrees, and you can tell she knows what's going on.
Oh, yeah. I just wrote tension, tension, tension in my notes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So then we have a scene with Cordelia where she walks up to Xander and Willow, who are sitting in the lounge, and she says, come on, can't you tell me anything about him? And Willow says, why are you so interested in Ford? Cordelia says, in case you haven't noticed, there's a devastating shortage of cute guys around here. Which I find an interesting comment coming from Cordelia. Then she says, the government is calling for rationing, so why does Buffy get to hoard them all? She has Angel. Why does she get Ford too? So come on, what's Ford interested in? And Xander goes, vampires. And Cordelia's like, oh, great, that's Buffy's best subject. You sure he doesn't like clothes?
That's Buffy's best subject. I appreciate that one.
Yeah, she's talking about how there's no guys around.
Yeah.
Who is literally dating a new guy every episode.
Well, she's been through all of them. She needs some more.
And then Buffy comes in, and Willow kind of apologizes for keeping stuff from her and mentions that Angel had come to her room and he was really concerned about her. Did you find out what Ford is up to? She says, I will. And she walks off, which is kind of weird because normally they solve everything together and she just leaves. Mm-hmm. And then Xander kind of gets distracted and he's like, looks at Willow and says, Angel was in your room?
Ours is a forbidden love.
Another one of those moments that just delights me to no end whenever it comes on. It's great. I need more of this. Just interactions of characters you don't see interacting all the time. It's always fun.
So, and then we have Ford back at the Sunset Club, and he's talking to Chanterelle and Diego and asking if everything's ready and are they nervous? And Chanterelle is so excited. She's like, do you really think they'll bless us? And Diego says, what about your friends? Are they coming? And Ford's like, what are you talking about? And then he finds out that other people have been there looking for him. Mm-hmm. And no one told him. And he's like, oh, okay. And Chanterelle's like, it's going to be all right, right? I need them. Which she's kind of obsessed. It's trying to make her seem obsessed. Mm-hmm. And Ford tells them it's going to be fine. And Buffy says it's really not. And she is coming down the steps. And then it says, I did not see this. I didn't catch this in the show. But in the script, it says that the guy that does the door is a few steps above her. And he's like holding his face like he just got punched.
No.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that either.
But I don't know if it actually got put in or not.
Yeah.
It might not have got put in. And Ford immediately says it's kind of drafty in here, which I'm assuming is a signal to Diego to shut the door. And they start talking about what Ford wants and what he's going to do. And she says, I kind of figured it out. You want to be a vampire. and realizes you were going to give them me. And he says he doesn't want to talk. And she's like, yeah, but you're gonna, and slams him up against the wall. And she says, you had to know I'd figure it out. And he says, I was counting on it. And then he goes back to his, like, obsessed with vampire movies thing. And he's like, this is exactly how it's supposed to play out. You asked me what's supposed to happen, you know. And he says it's already happening. And she runs up to the door and realizes it's locked. And Ford explains it's a special door and it can only be opened from the outside. And as soon as the sun sets, the vampires are coming. And Buffy spends a really long time trying to convince everyone that this is dangerous and they're going to get killed. And they don't really want to be there when the vampires arrive.
Yeah.
There's several comments from Diego and Chanterelle just saying, why are you fighting this? This is what we want. It's our chance for immortality, you know.
I just put in my notes they wax poetic about becoming vampires.
Right. But here's the thing. They were there for that conversation between Ford and Buffy. They know that Ford is giving the vampires Buffy so that they can become vampires. And they're just all okay with this, just someone dying so they can do it. Like, especially Chanterelle, you don't think she would be okay with that. Like, Diego, he seems kind of like a serial killer sidekick. But
do serial killers have sidekicks?
Is that not a good description of him?
It is. You're excellent.
Yeah. Like, he couldn't really do it himself, but he's fine with helping, you know, being the assistant.
He's the good, like, organizer.
Yeah. But Chanterelle, it doesn't seem like her personality, even just what we've seen so far, she'd be okay with this.
Because this idea of her being very diplomatic and stuff. Yeah, like I didn't notice that in my viewing of it. Like I didn't really clue in that they're all just kind of accepting of the fact that they're going to sacrifice Buffy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely paints them in more of a menacing light than a casual viewing would paint them as. Because, they seem to be in on this whole idea that they're going to sacrifice Buffy.
And they're not worried about it. They're, like, trying to figure out why she's not okay with it.
They're, like, confused. Like, why wouldn't you want to, you know, let us become vampires?
For us, so we can become vampires. Yeah. And then Buffy gives a very impassioned speech about, you don't understand, you're going to die. And she's talking to Diego. And she ends this very long, impassioned speech with, and my God, could you have a dorkier outfit? And Ford says, I gotta back her up. You do look like a big ninny. Which he kind of does. He's wearing a cape and a blue satiny shirt, and
Oh, man. There's the club scenes in this episode. Anytime they're in the Sunset Club, just take some time to pay attention to all the background actors and stuff like that. Diego's fitting in way better than Ford is.
Yeah. Ford had to dress normal to fit in at school.
So then we cut over to the factory, because it is, in fact, sunset, and all the vampires are getting ready to go over to the Sunset Club. Spike's instructions are just the most hilarious thing to me, because they're, like, very commanding and, like, you know, this is where you're going to be, this is where you're going to be. And then he ends with, and let's remember to share people.
Yeah.
And it's just the most delightful, wholesome, let's go murder a whole bunch of people. But you know, share.
And so they get there, and right before they get there, Buffy and Ford have a conversation, and it's basically revealed that the reason Ford wants this is because he doesn't have a choice. He's dying. He has brain tumors and only has 6 months left, and this is the only way he can continue to live. And she tries to explain it's not the same thing, and he basically goes off on her. I don't really get this part, because he's like, did I screw up your righteous anger? And I'm like, I get it. You're dying, and you want to be immortal so you don't die. I get it. But she's angry because you're trying to kill her to get it. Mm-hmm. You know, not, I mean, not do it yourself. Yeah. But you can't murder her to get it, you know.
Not only that at this point, but at this point it's also like she's figured it out, but everybody else is on the chopping block as well.
Even just that part. He's also killing all the other people because, Buffy has figured out they're not going to get turned. It's just him. So he's doing like mass murder to stay alive. And he acts like she has no right to be angry about this because he's dying. Mm-hmm. Well, no. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it was just you, maybe not. I could get behind the argument for that. But no, you don't get to take all these other people with you. Mm-hmm. You know.
Okay, so this conversation that they have, this whole back and forth, this is why I perceive this as one of the more important episodes of Buffy.
These people are sheep. They want to be vampires because they're lonely, miserable, they're bored. I don't have a choice.
You have a choice. You don't have a good choice, but you have a choice. You're opting for mass murder here, and nothing you say is gonna make that okay.
You think I need to justify myself to you?
I think this is all part of your little fantasy drama. Isn't this exactly how you imagined it? You tell me how you've suffered, and I feel sorry for you. Well, I do feel sorry for you, and if those vampires come in here and start feeding, I'll kill you myself.
It lays out a very specific philosophy of this idea of you always have a choice. And it's something that is very important to the existentialism philosophy, which is about freedom of choice and that humans define their own meaning in life and try to make rational decisions despite existing in an irrational universe. So there's your definition of existentialism. It is a very core philosophy for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We see it in Prophecy Girl before this, and we see it numerous times where Buffy has to make devastating choices. She has to choose to kill Angel. She has to choose to sacrifice herself at the end of season 5. And the very final episode of this series is called Chosen. This is a show about choices and the choices that we face when we grow up. So there's been a few mentions of like Buffy being a little immature in places, where she's kind of not wanting to hear out from her friends why they did what they did, where she kind of dismisses Angel towards the beginning of the episode because she is still in that in-between phase where she wants things to be more black and white and less gray. And so Ford is a very important figure in that because he is someone from Buffy's past. He is someone that directly relates to a time of innocence, of a 5th grade crush, a time of simplicity in her life. And this idea of Ford dying in a way that's going to cause him to wither and smell bad and become bald, those are all things that we also associate with aging. So it's like his specific illness is about rapidly aging and not getting to be young anymore. He has this whole philosophy of I'm gonna, die young and stay pretty. The flip of that is he's going to turn into a vampire, right? And we've talked about how vampires are ones that do not mature. They are frozen in time, and he is sacrificing this idea of growing up and the choices that he has to face by literally saying, I don't have a choice. And Buffy's countering that. And it's a huge moment of maturing for Buffy to say that you have a choice, and shows that she's starting to pull away from some of the things we've seen her do in this very episode of being kind of immature in those moments and demanding things and wanting things to be a very black and white picture. And it turns out the man she loves has a past where he tortured and turned this innocent girl into a vampire. Her friends have reasons to lie to her at times, and there are not always easy answers to every situation. Even in this moment, she is right. She is angry at Ford for what he is willing to do, but there is a part of her that still understands how desperate he is and how the need for survival, any type of survival, can sometimes outweigh other things because she experienced a very similar thing when she got the prophecy that she was going to die. You know, there's a lot that relates to what Buffy has gone through so far, and also what moving forward Buffy will have to face again and again and again. But it is a defining episode for Buffy's maturity, for her character, for her evolution on this path of growing up. And this exchange, I think, is just one of the most beautiful exchanges in the entire series.
I mean, I understood that it was about growing up and making the hard decisions. So I can very much see what you're saying about it being such an important episode.
It's important, and it's also really well crafted. And I think that helps a lot for me.
A very well done episode. And also, a lot of the episodes after this episode have much more mature themes. More death and tragedy and other stuff that hasn't been in a lot of other episodes.
Or has been in other episodes, but has been treated with the grace that it should have been treated with.
Not treated as seriously.
Yes.
Especially, like, we get some very serious episodes for the rest of season 2. Now, there's some that are just kind of like, oh, wow. That really just happened. But there's some very serious episodes.
Yes. And this really is the start of the main arc of season 2 in my mind. You could argue that maybe it's school hard with the introduction of Spike, but I feel like this episode does more with the more pivotal characters to set up stuff that's coming. If I was going to like pick essential episodes to get the story arc of season 2, I feel like I could comfortably skip School Hard. I don't think I could skip this episode.
Yeah. The vampires come in, and Chanterelle is very excited. She goes up the stairs to look for them, and Spike comes in with his vampire face on, and she immediately recoils from him.
It's an amazing shot. It is amazing. And there's everything that they shoot in this storm shelter that they're in is, there's several scenes where they like purposefully leave stuff really, really dark and have like really specific colors and things like that adds to it. This and a shot coming up a little bit later with both Spike and Drew are two of my favorites. Another one of my favorites happens a little bit earlier in the episode when Buffy's at the top of the stairs after she just tried the door and realizes she can't get out, and they're explaining how they want to be vampires, and Buffy's just lit in such a dark space. Like her hair almost looks a different color, it's so dark. And just kind of shows again like what she's experiencing, like what she's looking at, like the darkness that surrounds her with these people just willing to give up.
And give her up.
Yeah, and give her up. There's just some really cool stuff directorially as well. This episode amazing. Has some really good imagery in it. Spike yells, "Take them all, leave the Slayer for me," and he starts feeding on Chanterelle, and then all the vampires spread out and start feeding and fighting with people. Buffy and Ford are under the stairs fighting, and Buffy kind of just slams him into a pillar, and he goes unconscious. So Ford's done for a while. Yep. Buffy looks around and sees Drusilla, who has wandered in and is standing up on the balcony being Drusilla. And she immediately runs, jumps on the banister, and up onto the balcony. This is just funny to me, but it has in the script that this has to be wire-free. No wires. And I'm like, okay. She jumps up, grabs Drusilla, and holds her with a stake to Drusilla's heart, which this scene is really interesting because at this point we really don't know how strong Drusilla can be. But she's not right now because she's weak from the mob. But later we see exactly how strong she can be, and it's like, oh wow, she could have just ripped out of that hold Buffy had on her. But she can't right now, and Buffy, yells for Spike, and he sees that she's got Drew. He tells them all to stop and to let everyone out, and he tells the vampires to let everybody go, and Buffy starts walking to the door and tells Buffy to go down the stairs, or tells Spike to go down the stairs, do it now, and
Buffy reaches the door, pushes Drusilla at Spike, and then runs out the drawer and closes it behind her. Mm-hmm. And Spike goes up to the door, and he's like, oh, where's the doorknob? So all the vampires are now locked in there in the Sunset Club with only an unconscious Ford.
Yep. Buffy's outside, and as everybody's getting away, and Angel, Willow, and Xander come up, and she explains that the vampires are contained, and everything's okay, and that they'll have to come back. And they're like, for what? And she says, for the body. And then we cut back inside, and Ford is waking up and asking what's going on. And Spike replies with, we're stuck in the basement. And the Slayer is not stuck in the basement. To which we have to add to a counter, because he specifically says the word basement.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness, that is a counter. They are stuck in a basement. Now,
I debated back and forth.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just going to call it one. But I debated back and forth on whether or not this counted as a basement, but then Spike actually said the word basement. I'm just like, well, he answered my question.
So, in the basement, we are now at 5.
There's more. There's so many.
Yeah, definitely.
So, then Ford asks for his reward. He's like, I held up my end of the deal, and this is that other just amazing shot. It's so menacing of just Spike and Drew, like, looking back at him. And it's just so terrifying.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, and he
did what he said he would do.
He gets it. They held up their end, too. And then the like, warm fuzzy at the end of a terrible episode scene. Buffy and Giles at the gravesite. Buffy kind of explains that it would be simpler if she could just hate him, and that he probably wanted that. She thinks that he wanted to be the villain, but, just kind of like rationalizing all of this, this idea of things aren't black and white, and there's nothing simple about any of this, and then kind of just asks, does it get easy? To which Ford jumps out of the grave and Buffy stakes him, symbolizing Buffy staking her childhood in a way because of the relationship that she had with Ford and that tie to the past that she is killing, and showing that maturity in a visual way here, that she is making that decision to grow up and look at things differently and understand the layers of gray and the reasons why things get harder as you become an adult. But Giles continues without missing a beat, asks what Buffy wants him to say, and she responds with, lie to me. And then I'm just going to play the clip, because you gotta.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Very comforting.
Yes, it's terribly simple. The good guys are always stalwart and true. The bad guys are easily distinguished by their pointy horns or black hats. And we always defeat them and save the day. No one ever dies, and everybody lives happily ever after.
Liar.
And that's the episode. It's real good.
It is a good episode. That is it. And next week is, and let me look, because apparently I cannot remember the order of season 2, The Dark Age.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening to this. I almost said watching. Y'all aren't watching. And now is the time that we say bye.
Bye. What's My Line is next.
No, I think the Dark Ages is next. Yeah, the Dark Age is next.
It is. What is wrong with me? Okay. Sorry. Cut all that part out.
Fix it in post.